Jenner clan is one of the most famous, most controversial, and most talked about family all of us has ever heard. The most notable Kardashian award definitely goes to Kim. Tabloids and magazines are practically obsessed with criticizing her figure and Instagram photos. Yet, this woman can handle them with so much style and class. By the way, whether it be Kim, Kendall, or even Kylie, we know their names. And we know the drama that they create on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Back in June 2015, however, their father, Bruce Jenner, finally came out of the closet and revealed something shocking to the world. He announced that he wishes to identify himself as a woman. A very good afternoon to everyone present in this hall. My name is Joan, and today I stand before you here to talk about one of the most controversial topics ever in our society, as well as a topic that is most dear to my heart: transgender equality. Now, to those who identify themselves as females, please raise up your hands. All right, thank you. Now, to those who identify themselves as males, please raise up your hand. Thank you. Now, am I right to say that almost all of you here identify with the gender that you were born as? Well, unfortunately, for people like Bruce Jenner, that isn't always the case. People like Bruce Jenner is what we call transgenders. What are transgenders? Are they homosexuals? Are they she-males? Well, what are they? Simply speaking, transgenders are simply individuals who have always had the desire to become the opposite gender than what they were conceived as. For instance, a young boy yearning to become a girl as he slowly experiences life, feeling different. In Bruce Jenner's case, he was first conceived as a male, living the life of a boy. Being an Olympic champion at the age of 27, I think we can all agree that he received fame at a rather young age. Yet, what was supposedly the best time of his life, he still felt unbelonged in our world. Ever since he was a little boy, he had always wished he was born a girl instead. However, considering this time period being the mid-1980s, as well as it being the peak of his career, in which endorsement deals were literally offered to him, a story about an Olympic decathlon star wanting to become a woman would have been scandalous and would have ruined his image. For years, he would still continuously explore his gender identity and sneak out of the house, even after having Kylie and Kendall. There were several times when his children and wife caught him in the act, but said nothing about the situation. Bruce only ever told his ex-wives and sister about his condition, but the circle slowly expanded. He recently broke the news to his mother and 10 children. Regardless to say, tears of happiness and tears of sadness were shared. But all in all, his family supported him. Bruce Jenner, at long last, finally and officially became a trans woman in June 2015 through a Diane Sawyer interview in which he revealed his struggles, experiences, and relief. A few weeks after the interview submerged, he did a Vanity Fair cover photo shoot in which he made his official debut as Caitlyn Jenner, no longer Bruce. She has now finally fully transitioned into a woman without the removal of her genitals, and is proud to say that she is now finally feeling like herself. I was on YouTube a few months ago when I came across this movie trailer. Fast forward a few weeks later, I was watching this movie, and by the end of it, I was bawling my eyes out as each scene took me to a whole new emotional level. Let me tell you an overview about this plot. This story talks about Ina Wagner, a 1920s artist who was the first to ever attempt sexual reassignment surgery. His relationship with his wife slowly became estranged, and his journey into becoming a woman. Mind you, this was an era in which technology was still blooming, and things such as performing surgeries were still deemed unsafe. I'm sorry to disappoint all of you, but this story did not end with a happily ever after. After 3 successful surgeries, Ina Wagner changed his name to Lily L, finally feeling like herself. Unfortunately, during her last surgery, she had an infection and thus died. The movie title of the story is called The Danish Girl, which stars Eddie Redmayne and Alicia Vikander, both whom are Oscar-winning actors, and might I add that this movie was marvelously presented. Do you want to hear a tragic fact? Thank you for your attention. The suicide rate of transgenders in our society is one of the highest in the world, grossing over 41% of the community ending their lives. Not everyone is as privileged as Bruce Jenner to fully become who they truly want to be. Some people, whether they be trans men or trans women, they are not accepted for who they are by their parents, teachers, associates, or even friends. The problems they face? Depression, doubting of religion, and worst of all, being bullied. So what do they do to solve their problems? They simply end their lives by committing suicide. That way, they won't have to deal with society's hatred towards them. It's times like these where we shouldn't be judging a book by its cover nor content. We shouldn't be having certain stereotypes about people saying that they're too manly or they're too feminine. What we should be doing is stopping ourselves, think about the consequences, and listen to their side of the story. They have a voice too, but oftentimes it is almost never heard due to everyone else's criticisms and judgments. These transgenders want nothing but to be accepted into our society. They only want to be loved and to be treated like normal human beings would, regardless of the transformation. Are modern people civilized enough to respect their freedom of choice and accept them for who they are? To paraphrase what our teachers say, we must respect other people's decisions, especially when we fail to understand the situation. Because remember, do not judge, and you won't be judged. Now, yes, it may be hard to do so due to certain stereotypes about these transgenders, but remember, God tells us to love everyone, even your enemies. For there is truth in love that lacks in hate. There have been many debates between religious people and people who support the LGBT community. Because most religions do not support gay or transgender people. Yet, religions also tell us to love everyone, never to discriminate anyone. I am not here to convince you to support the transgender community or, vaguely speaking, the LGBT community. You have a choice to support or to condemn these transgenders. But know this, discrimination will not only bring harm to the victim, but also to you. According to Bernie Sanders, supporting the LGBT community does not mean that we are one of them. By the same token, supporting the refugees does not mean that you are a refugee. And supporting the black community does not mean that you are black. What it means is that you stand up for every single human being's right to be respected for who they are. And that is exactly what needs to be doing. Now that I've ended my speech, I hope all of you here have had a better understanding of the transgender community. You have a voice. You can either use it for the good or use it for the worse. The choice is entirely up to you. Thank you.
I mentioned earlier on when Joan started to give his speech, I'm trying to get his speech during the crypt session, and I said I would like to commend her for choosing this topic, because especially in Malaysia, this is a topic you don't talk about. We don't talk about the LGBTs. We don't know who they are. We don't want to know who they are. And some people may think who you are when you are not who you are, and they might even put you away. So this is a topic you have such courage, my dear, to talk about this. And this is also something that is really so apt during this time, because I think a week ago, this is a crime of hate. A week ago, more than now, what, 50 people now? About 49 people, and another 6 very critically injured, and another 20 still in hospital, because one man decided to go into this nightclub, a gay nightclub, and started to shoot people. What is that? Crime of hate? Was he being judgmental? And yet, after lots of investigation, they said that he has been there for many months before the killings. So it was posted on Facebook, and I said this, I'm not as eloquent as you, Joanne, but I will try, because I didn't practice as much as you did with Mr. Kirttna, so I'll try. I said, it is sad that we cannot accept that all of us are God's creation. We are so judgmental and examiners of other people's lives. I believe we make our heaven and earth here on earth. Heaven and hell here on earth. But some people think that they can go to heaven by creating hell for others here on earth. What's happening around the world, the killings, war and conflicts in Syria, Iran, Iraq, and in many more countries are just senseless. Good deeds should be the measure of our character, and it is of universal value we should all embrace. Some people will say that I'm looking at this problem in such a simplistic manner when it's more complicated. But as an educator, I firmly believe that good education is the answer. Teaching good values should be the answer to create a world of peace. Get back on track with our basic good moral values. So much more to be said. My thoughts and prayers are for the families in bereavement. May the survivors have a complete recovery. There's also for all, and there is also for all currently suffering in war zone and in other parts of the world. Like, judge them. For you don't want people to judge you. You know? And there's nothing wrong. And it's so sad to know that how many people commit suicide?
41% of the community.
Where?
Overall.
41%. And I've told all of you, nothing and nobody is worth your life. You live your life to the fullest. It's a gift. Embrace it, because you can do everything and anything you want to do that can bring about a wonderful world, not only for yourself, but for the people around you. And you can make a big difference. So, don't be judgmental, and don't have this, hate for other people because you think you're better than them. No. Always make a wrong right and make a good better. Thank you very much, Joan.
Thank you, Dr. Frida. Our next speaker is from Form 4, Don Emeely. Speaking on the topic of confidence.
Good afternoon to everyone present in the hall today. My name is Don Emeely, and today I'll be talking about confidence. I think it's no secret that all of us here rely on the opinion of others to truly feel satisfied about ourselves. And unfortunately, we have become a generation of Nicki Minaj and Taylor Swift, constantly telling us to shine and be different. And ironically, that different is exactly what the media has implemented in all the minds of the teenage girls. And that makes teenage girls lose their sense of individuality and their sense of uniqueness. I think we all know the frightening fact that all of us here are too reliant on social media. And let me tell you something. That reliance has been the most unprofitable towards us teenagers. We are humans. We are not mindless sheep that need to be tamed. We are humans. We celebrate our originality, differences, and our creativity. We are humans. We make mistakes and we learn from them. We do not need anyone's recognition for our success nor our failure. Fame and fortune is given and taken, just like the oozing wind, as how Thomas Hardy puts it. And in the blink of an eye, everything that we preciously hold in our hands can be taken away. So why? Why the fuss? Why the confusion? Why have we become so obsessed with these likes and comments that others should bestow upon in order for us to feel happy? And the greater question is, why should we even care? Since when did we let others decide for us on who we are and how we are? Confidence. It is bloomed through self-discovery and self-recognition, not by what some boy thinks of you or not think of you. I mean, think about it. You put yourself through so much to prove yourself to someone who would hardly be a part of your life in 5 years' time, let alone 50. So why the fuss? Since when did we find confidence in someone as being too prideful or self-centered? when self-confidence last time was seen as something admiring and beautiful. When I was younger, and if I were to see a confident person, I would think to myself, I really need to be like that person. But as I transition from being a kid to a teenager, I honestly find it really hard to be strong, to be who I am and who I want to be. What is self-confidence? Easy. Self-confidence is a feeling of trust. The feeling of trust in your abilities to succeed. The feeling of trust in the qualities that make you who you are. And most importantly, self-confidence is in your strength of judgment. It is in your strength to choose what is right and what is wrong. It might sound cliche, but without self-confidence, you will be missing out so much. And I believe in order to succeed, you need to have self-confidence. And you need to know that there is no one in this world ever again like us. There will only be one Emeely, one Mr. Thing, one Dr. Frida. And we need to know that you are one in the billions of humans who have walked this earth. And this life given to you right now, this is your chance for you to take and for you to make your mark on this world. The world is changed by the power of individuals. And I believe that with every fiber of my body and my soul. If it wasn't for Thomas Edison, our homes wouldn't have shined as bright. And if it wasn't for Mahatma Gandhi, we would never know the power of silent resistance. And if it wasn't for Mother Teresa, Abraham Lincoln, and Barack Obama, we would never know the misery of slavery. We are unique, and that is our power. Before I end this, I'd like to tell, confidence is not in our genes, or given, or confidence is not obtained by wealth and power. In fact, confidence by having self-confidence, we obtain wealth and power. Confidence is built through hardships, mistakes that we make, and success. A man who makes no mistakes makes nothing. We need to keep focused on our academics, co-curriculum, and even relationships. And we have to know that we are limitless. Before I end this, I'd like to quote Shakespeare. A coward dies many times before his death, and a brave one dies only once, and that is his test. Thank you.
Okay. If you're not a Cempakan, you will never know that nothing is impossible. Yes, that's right. Confidence. Confidence is about knowing yourself. Confidence is about knowing your failures and your mistakes and learning from that. As I've always said, we are always in progress. And you can only get this confidence if you go through life, through all the obstacles, through all the failures, through the joy of achievements, and that will build up your confidence. So boys, don't worry if the girls don't look at you. And girls, do this if the boys don't look at you. Because it doesn't matter, like what Emeely said, well, in a few years' time, things will change, isn't it? Yes. You see, you might see her and say, wow, is that Emeely? My goodness me, Emeely. And Emeely says, about yourself, knowing yourself very, very well. And you've said it so well, Emily. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Frida. Our third speaker today is from Junior 2 Business. Put your hands together and welcome Muhammad Elmyzan. He will be telling us about Hollywood Reboots.
Good afternoon, Dr. Frida, and to everyone present in this hall. Before I start, let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Elmyzan, and growing up, I was fascinated with films. They're visually astonishing, yet at the same time, truly compelling in the way they tell their story. As a huge Star Wars fan, I was introduced to my first movie, The Empire Strikes Back. Now, I was really blown away by how they were able to make this film even before I was born. Main antagonist to reveal his true identity. Now, I wasn't just inspired by the movies. I was inspired by the directors too, from George Lucas to Steven Spielberg. These people were the makers of my childhood and the ones who I should thank today in making me love films this much. Now, what's so great about these films isn't just about the production design or the visual effects that go into making these films. Those things only complement what is the main thing of a film, which is story, the originality of the story. Now, if it wasn't for George Lucas and his originality, we wouldn't have a movie about a war happening in galaxies far, far away. If it wasn't for Robert Zemeckis, we wouldn't have a movie about a time-traveling DeLorean. And lastly, if it wasn't for Steven Spielberg, one of the most iconic characters in cinematic history, Indiana Jones, wouldn't have been made. Now, these people made movies in which we will live on to watch for another 50 years or so. The magic of cinema is truly amazing. Yet, nowadays, big companies tend to scrape off originality and decide to just make big and cool movies with no original content. One of my biggest concerns are with reboots. Now, reboots in general are just simply a money grab. They're only made by big companies to gain a few extra money to spend on other useless reboots. Now, this endless cycle of reboots have made me realize that we are at an age where originality does not matter anymore, and anything related to the 80s will make big money. Now, it's not that reboots are a whole lot of bad thing, actually. I can name you a few, for example, like Star Trek, made in 2009 by J.J. Abrams, the same guy who made the new Star Wars film. Another great example would be how comic book movies should be made. And lastly, Mad Max Fury Road, made in 2015, which won an Oscar for Best Film Editing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Costume Design, just to name a few. Now, let's go back to 2015 and see one of that year's lowest rated movie, The Fantastic Four. Now, was the movie worth a reboot? No. Was the movie even worth watching? Now, with an audience rating of 9% and the majority saying no in this audience, we can see that it's technically useless to produce another reboot. Now, the first Fantastic Four movie was only made in 2005, and 11 years later, we got another one with boring and gritty plot, which makes no sense, and a one-dimensional character. which I question to this day why these big companies like 20th Century Fox decide to spend $120 million on such a useless reboot. Now, let's compare this movie to The Dark Knight. Now, the first Batman movie was made in 1989 by Tim Burton, and he showed us for the first time the Batman that we now know, the gritty and gothic Batman. Now, Tim Burton took out the word goth from Gotham and implemented his vision into what we know now as the Batman. We can see how his vision and his originality has changed the way we perceive Batman. Now, forward back to 2008, we have what we know now as the Dark Knight trilogy, made by Christopher Nolan. We can see how Christopher Nolan has implemented his vision into this movie, from the what we know before as this surrealistic style of superhero with capes and latex suits, to the now known crime fighter who fights in real armor against real threats in a city ironically called Gotham. Now, if I were to compare the Fantastic Four to the Dark Knight, the audience would mostly choose the Dark Knight over the Fantastic Four. And why is that? It's simply due to originality. Now, while we're at this topic of adaptations into movies, why don't we diverge a bit into novels into movies? One of the finest examples would be Baz Luhrmann's The Great Gatsby, made in 2012, adapted from a book written by Scott F. Fitzgerald in 1925. Now, as you can see, this book dates back to the 1920s and 1930s. Yet, when we watched it in 2012, it felt so fresh, so new, so original. And why is that? It's simply due to the originality of the movie. From the direction of Baz Luhrmann, to the great cinematography, to the great acting skills of Leonardo DiCaprio, we can see how this is a visual masterpiece, even though it's adapted from the book. Now, speaking of visual masterpiece, I can name you another one. Like, for example, The Sin City, directed by Robert Rodriguez. Now, although this is not a comic book superhero movie, this is a comic book film, adapted straight from the comic book into the silver screen. Now, as you can see, the only color that is present in this picture is red. And why is that? Well, because of Robert Rodriguez's vision to just show the audience how unique this adaptation could be, he just emphasized on the color of red to symbolize violence and blood in a city called Sin City. Now, let's go back to comic book movies, comic book superhero movies, into adaptations of comic book heroes to movies. Now, we can see, because of Christopher Nolan, we now have what we know as the age of realism in comic book movies. And because of Christopher Nolan, one director was inspired by him. It's Zack Snyder. Now, we can see Zack Snyder has made a movie titled The Man of Steel, a man who we once knew before as Superman, the man dressed in a red cape and red spandex. Well, fast forward, and we now have a realism style of Superman. A man with a story, with character. A man bound by destiny to protect humankind from his own kind. Now, that is originality. And that is what I want to see in movies. And so, to just finish this off, I just want to say one thing. It's not a matter of originality. It's Hollywood's #1 rule. If something worked, do it again, and again, and again. Because money never sleeps, and greed is good in Hollywood. Thank you.
talking about reboots, and according to Elmyzan, old movies have got a lot of content, and new movies, they just make money and people just go and watch it, and it's good, and it's got good ratings, that's it, and there's no more content, it doesn't matter. But there are people who like to see content more than the cinematography of a movie. But I think new movies now have new technology, has made it louder and made it even more amazing, right? And Superman has now become different from the Superman I used to know, who will go into a telephone booth to change into his, you know what, cape and get out of the telephone booth. But now he just come out with his costume and he flies in a different way. He doesn't fly like that anymore. He just shoots up. And then when he lands, he makes a big hole in the ground. So I don't know, we all get entertained by that. But somehow, there are many people who prefer old movies. They don't like the remake of a movie. I saw Ninja Turtles recently. Imagine me going to see Ninja Turtles. Apparently, the first one was better than the latest one. But somehow, I think with technology, with the remake of an old movie, it has changed what we know of movies. Things become a bit more incredulous, you know, and more entertaining. And I don't know, somehow the movies are becoming longer and longer, isn't it? All the Marvel characters, you know, the movie from the Marvel comic books, it has become longer and longer. Movies used to be 90 minutes, now it's 2 hours and 2.5 hours. So actually, if you like a good sleep, go and see the movies. Because I will always sleep in the cinema for half an hour, then I've got to see it again, because I've got to stitch the stories, you know, because otherwise I don't know what happened. So it's becoming longer and longer, and I think people go to the movies now just to be entertained, to be, you know, to get rid of the stresses of life and so on and so forth. So that's a very good insight of what a reboot is. And if we can reboot ourselves, I think we should. Because as I said just now, make a right a wrong, make